Hey Fly Tires, welcome back. I'm Matt, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today, we've got our third fly in the user-created Ringneck Pheasant skin series. This one was created by Jammy Erwin of Alabama. Now he's calling this, get this name, the Cahaba Gobbler. So, quite a cool name, say that 3 times fast. Jamie says his inspiration for this fly was a turkey. You know, it's almost Thanksgiving, so what about the Cahaba? Well, that's a river that runs through central Alabama, starts about 10 miles from Jamie's house. He tells me that there's 131 different species of fish in the river, not a single trout. So obviously, Jamie is a warm water fly fisherman, and he created this fly pretty much as a smallmouth bass fly. But what's the difference between a big wet fly or a small streamer? I know up here in Maryland, I'll fish this thing as a small streamer in some of the rivers that I fish. Now we know the inspiration for this fly was a big, blue-headed, red-bearded tom turkey. And I think that's a great lesson that Jamie teaches us, that inspiration for flies can come from anywhere. I mean, Jamie has tied poppers with his local high school colors. He's telling me about a series he's thinking about, tying poppers of all the NFL team colors. I mean, wouldn't that be cool? Imagine a shadow box with all the NFL team colors in it. That would be pretty cool to have on your wall. So I think Jamie came up with a pretty cool pattern. Let him know in the comments what you think about it. Let's give it a shot. So there it is in the vise, our first draft of the Cahaba Gobbler. Now I'm going to be tying this on a size 12 2X long wet fly hook. And I am putting some weight on this. Jamie and I talked and thought, okay, we don't want this to, you know, ride too high in the water. We don't necessarily want it to be too heavy, so I'm just using 0.15. But I'm going to put a few wraps to give it a little bit of heft to it, so it will ride, you know, a little bit under the surface as it's stripped back through the water. So I'm going to put a dam of, now this is Peacock blue thread. This is one of the trademarks. The head, I think, is going to be, really makes it stand out. So 70 denier thread, I'll put a dam in the front and the back, and then take it back to the tail. Okay, but before we put the tail in, we're getting a little crazy here and putting a little red tag on it. So that, where my thread is hanging, is about where I'm going to catch in the tail. So I'm going to put some red floss here. What's this? This multi-strand stuff right there. And I'm not going to snip that, I'm just going to bury it right there. Okay, that'll be fine. It'll be covered with our rabbit here in just a minute. So I'm thinking, whatever you think looks good here, we're thinking maybe 2 wraps, just a slight little red tag back here. It's going to be under the tail, so it's not going to be all that visible, but I think it's just a nice little touch to it. So let's go ahead and catch this off. See that? Not a whole lot of red there. Now we've got our thread hanging where we're going to put in the tail. So these feathers from the Ringneck Pheasant, and it's going to be a pretty substantial tail. I think it looked better the bigger it was. So I'm going to take about that many right there. I don't know how many that is, maybe 15 or so. Probably a body length. Just catch this in. Watch the point of your hook. I hate when I do that. Okay. So we can see that a little bit of that red in there, and I need to go a little bit farther back right here. Okay, and that's going to be fine. And I'm going to use these feathers right here to help fill in this space right behind those wire wraps. So let's go ahead here and snip this off. I'm going to clean this up if you want, doesn't really matter. Next component is using a yellow wire. Use a gold wire if you have, use brassy, whatever you got, but I think something that's brighter will stand out against this brown dubbing we're going to put on for the body. So I think this hot yellow looked pretty good. I'm sure silver, gold, brass would work just as well. But got that caught in. Now let's take our thread back closer to the tail and put some wax on it. And for the dubbing, I'm using just a brown rabbit. If your body is pretty smooth and you got a good taper, you can put a pretty thin body on it. If you've got a mangled up taper, sort of like I do right there, you might have to put just a little bit thicker of a noodle on just to kind of bury your imperfections. But this might take us a couple of applications of this dubbing to get all the way up to the front. So let's just take your time. I think that's fine right there. And then slowly wrap it on up. Now here's where you have to make a decision. Is that enough of a body? I don't know. If I put more on, I'm going to risk crowding the head. But if I don't put more on, I'm going to risk the head being too big. So I'm going to make the call to just put a little bit more on right here. Okay, I think that's going to be just fine right there. Now let's go ahead and wrap. Got any guard hairs there, you might want to pull them out. Go ahead and wrap this rib evenly spaced all the way up front. Okay, when you got it up front, go ahead, 2 or 3 good wraps. This is size brassy, so it might take, a couple of extra wraps to really lock it in. Put some tension on your thread before you spin this off. If you've got a little sharp point right there, you might want to bury it with just a few loose wraps right here. Now it's time for the throat. Now I've taken just 1 strand of red wool yarn, and it was actually a 3 strand, so I've split those up, and I'm going to catch this in right here. It's got a little bit of fuzz right there, so what you might want to do is just try to get a cleaner end, and we'll little pinch wrap right there. Before I really lock it in, make sure I'm coming off the bottom like I want, and then pull it back just a little so you don't have as much fluff up front to clean up. So that's coming off the bottom like I want. And let's just really smooth out this base where we're going to put our wing in just a second. I will go ahead and cut this to about the hook point. It's a decent sized throat. Now you could leave it just like that and fish it. A lot of people that tie the black-nosed dace will. I'll take my Velcro here and just pull it out a little bit. Just try to fluff it out. You could do this with your bodkin or your toothbrush or dubbing brush or whatever you want. So I think that's fine right there. Now for the wing, one of those same feathers we use for the tail, and you could probably use the same one if you grabbed one big enough, but grab one of the bigger ones toward the bottom of the skin, and then just take some of the longer fibers. For this size, probably about that many right there, a little bit more than we use for the tail. And I'm just going to pull these off, and you might want to spin them around so that if they have any natural curve, that it's curving down. I think that's going to look okay right there. And about, to the end of the tail, if you've got enough feather here, in which this case I think we do on this size, size 12 hook. It's not huge. So I think that's going to be okay right there, and our head's not too huge. A couple of securing wraps right here. Now let's go in here. You might be able to just bury these, but I'm going to snip them. I think it will make cleaning up the head a little bit easier. You could also singe them off if you wanted. I don't typically do that because a lot of times I will burn other materials when I'm not paying attention. So we'll just go right back up to right behind the eye. And we can build this little ramp and make a nice substantial head. So one of the things that I think is cool about this fly is this big blue head. So don't be afraid to really build it up. And then put your drop of varnish or resin or head cement on it. I think we need it even bigger than that. So let's go ahead and throw a few more wraps until you get a nice, pretty smooth head. Okay, I think we're going to be fine right there. Let's put some whip finish turns on this thing. I'm sure 4 will be fine right there. And our drop of varnish or head cement and the Cahaba Gobbler is done. So pretty nifty little pattern. Thanks Jammy Erwin for coming up with it, and thanks for working with me on helping tie it. So that's it, my friends. I really appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.